Hello and welcome to Warblog. Today we're looking at Vila Salazar, which is a small border conflict between Rhodesia and Mozambique in 1977. Essentially there were quite a few of these. I'm still learning about the whole thing, but essentially what this is a basic border crossing scenario in which the Rhodesian Security Forces, these people, cross into Mozambique with air support. They're hawker hunters, and attack a guerrilla camp which is there. So essentially the background is after the Mozambican War of Independence, which were, there were a lot of border skirmishes as the white Rhodesians clashed with the anti-apartied blacks, who were targeting farmers and other targets. There were a number of raids, such as this. So there's a few more. There's one other scenario which I have actually already done. There's a couple more that I've sort of got from my Times newspapers, which I'm getting this scenario from. So this is one of those scenarios that's really just sort of, there was a border skirmish and that's about it. So this is not a famous one or anything in particular. In fact, I can read it. It was Rhodesian troops backed by air support crossed the southeastern border into Mozambique early today and attacked a guerrilla base camp, killing at least 20 guerrillas, military authorities have announced. The raid, underway as the American Anglo-consultative team seeking proposals for a Rhodesian settlement, flew from Salazar to Maputo, the Mozambique capital, was said to be continuing, whatever that means. The communique said the Rhodesian troops overran a base camp 3 miles inside Mozambique. First reports said 20 guerrillas were killed and a large quantity of war material captured without any casualties. The military authorities said the raid was mounted because of considerable increase in the past week in the number of guerrilla groups crossing the Mozambique-Rhodesia border near the border town of Vila Salazar, which is there. The incursion is the third by Rhodesian forces to have been officially announced in Salisbury. We've got one of the other ones there, and I think this is the one that I've got as the other scenario, the one that I'm mentioning just now. The first was last August, when Rhodesians claimed to have killed more than 350 nationalist guerrillas at their base camps. Mozambique and United Nations sources said the target attacked was a refugee camp at Nayadonzia, and that the death toll was much higher. We'll get onto that one at another time. The second, which I haven't done, I might do it just to get the set from this little article. The second announced raid occurred in November when Rhodesian troops spent 3 days in Mozambique knocking out guerrilla bases. So that sounds like a scenario, or a campaign. There's another thing here, I don't know what this refers to, but it just says Dar el Salam, the Mozambique Information Office, said Rhodesian forces had made major attacks against 3 Mozambique army bases. It said the attacks had been resisted, but gave no casualty figures. So this is from the other side. But basically, just that's a bit of the background on the Times newspaper thing that I'm getting. But just to put it into perspective, because I'm learning really about this whole Rhodesia Mozambique thing. I keep hearing about it, the zealous scouts and things, but never, or zealous scouts, I don't know. There were, essentially, I think this is the important thing to sort of put it into perspective, because even if you're just learning, there were a number of raids such as this between the Mozambican War of Independence, which ended on the 25th of June 1975, and the Mozambican Civil War in 1977. So these are the 2 key things to remember. So there's 3 sorts of things happening here. The first is the Mozambican War of Independence. Now that pretty much finished on 25th of June 1975. I don't think it started then. I'm pretty sure that's the end date. So they had a war of independence. So I could do that. And I'll be doing scenarios from that just to sort of, put it into a framework. And then 2 years later, they had the Mozambique Civil War, which is 1977. Now, again, there can be scenarios specific to that, but this is the in-between years. So essentially, after the Mozambique War of Independence, and I'm sort of just speaking from memory here, just from a few things that I've read, but basically the new government of Mozambique were pretty much anti-apartheid, and that was a big problem for the people in Rhodesia who were white, apartheidists, or whatever you call it, and also the South African government, which is also apartheid. And so both of these, this is the crux, both of these countries, firstly Rhodesia and then latterly South Africa, they were actually trying to unbalance, not so much overthrow, but they were trying to create a lot of problems for Mozambique. I can't remember the exact terms, but basically they were trying to disrupt. They were basically trying to cause instability in the country, to make it hard for them to actually do anything, and that actually sort of worked because they had a massive drought. There was a massive South African drought, which obviously caught the whole of South Africa, not just the political country South Africa. And it was that drought, I think, threw them into the Civil War of 1977. But so essentially, there's a lot. I'm not going to say much more because I don't know much more other than wild guesses. But there's about sort of 3 or 4 types of this Fremlo and Remelo and all these sorts of type guerrilla groups. So Mozambique was sort of, the Civil War was won, and I think they had an election. I don't know. Again, I'm just speaking off the cuff now. But there were all these groups, but they didn't have a full sort of majority. There were still other military groups, and as they were disrupted and the famine came around, the other military groups basically rose up and caught the Civil War. So essentially that's sort of some of the background. I mean, if you're interested in this sort of period, this will be helpful to you. If you already know, you'll probably think I'm an idiot for my ignorance. But basically, I'm just trying to put a few pieces together, and I've been meaning to do this sort of period for a long time, but the problem is with it is that there are no major engagements. It's all sort of skirmishy, bush war type, probably sort of, squad and platoon level actions. And this is going to be typical of the sorts of engagements, just 2 counters. But I actually enjoy the 2 counter games, just because they're so much easier. So anyway, but now you sort of got an idea. I mean, for some people you might be thinking, where's Rhodesia? Well, Rhodesia doesn't exist anymore. It's now called Zimbabwe, and again, it's one of these things that people sort of think they know, and then realise that they don't know. And yet, Mozambique still exists. I was thinking, oh, these are both historic, but Mozambique still exists. It's Rhodesia that doesn't. It's now Zimbabwe, I think. But anyway, I'm going to start off with this. And if you look at the counter, there's not much to it, but it's the RHAF. It's a Rhodesian Air Force, but it's not RAF like in the Royal Air Force. So they've got an R and then a small H to distinguish it. And these are Hawker Hunters, which are pretty nifty jet fighters. So we're going to go in there and try to damage these guerrillas and do nothing at all. Oh well. And we're going to come in here with our chosen mechanised infantry. Well, I could have done it into that hex. Look at that, 4-1, and I've got a DE with a die roll of 1, but because they're irregulars, they just retreated. So that's that, really. It's now the irregulars' turn, and now they can. I might have had some movement there. They can try and come back and fight back because they're irregular. So this will be a 1-1, I guess. But the attacker loses. The attacker retreats. That's odd. They've got an attacker retreat and they seem to have died. Oh no. Oh no, that's because so they're over there. with Depression 2. So that's their move. That was a bit of a mistake. So they tried fighting back. They've got no movement now, so that's the end of the Mozambique turn. So we can get our Hawker Hunters in again, providing air support. Hopefully they'll be a bit more successful this time. No. 5-1 and no damage. What's going on? Okay. 5-1 DR. Let's try again. Oh, look at that, nothing. Mozambique. They're not actually Mozambique units, but they're sort of closely tied. 1-1 and exchange. So they're now on 3, and we're now on 1. Oh, we did some damage this time, 1.3. So it puts us up to 4.3 depressions. DE. Just keep chasing them in my mechanized troop units. DR. Movement 0.5. Okay, well, the Mozambique units are going to run away. We're not going to follow up with the aircraft. And we're just going to sit there now, converting the guerrilla camp. They've embedded. Ideally, I need an option to take them off the board. -1. 2. 5. 8. So we'll turn. And we've destroyed the camp. So it's not a capture objective, it's a destroy objective. So we've achieved that. Let's see Mozambique turn. And game over. There we have a destroyed guerrilla camp. We suffered, well, we got no depressions at the end of that because we recovered. These units have recovered as much as they can, but they're down to 2.3, so they suffered casualties, and their camp was destroyed. So that's a pretty historic, it's a pretty accurate historical sort of representation of what went on with the with that border raid. Not much more to say about that, really. I mean, it's such a simple game that it does appeal to me. But I think you know there's a minute to go, but I'll just add I think it's an interesting period of history, and just like the Angola War, another one of my favourites. I haven't actually covered it. They're just difficult to get information on. There's no such sort of idiot's guide to the Rhodesian War. There's a few sort of books on the zealous scouts and their sort of operations, but they're all from sort of like a memoir type books. I don't like those, written by one of the soldiers. I like the strategic books, and there really aren't any strategic books that sort of show the ebb and flow of battle, because it wasn't that sort of battle. It was more guerrilla warfare, or at least I'm going to find out anyway. So if you're interested in this, then hopefully you'll find that insightful, and stay tuned. I'll hopefully be putting up more within the next decade, and I'll speak to you later. Cheer out, bye.